Check, check, check. 1 3. 1 1 3. Can you all not hear me? Or can you? Give me a second. Can I see the chat? Which might help with this whole question. Check, check, check. 1 2 3. I hope you can hear me because I'm not quite sure. Things are still slow because of the internet, I guess. Also, I should probably stop playing music in the background. Perfect. Well, welcome back, everybody. And cheers. Can you also see me, though? That would be like the... I mean, if you want to see me, we can't help you with that one. That sounds good. All right. Perfect. Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad some people made it here, even though there's like 10,000 other live streams going on at the same time. People are sprinting. People are talking about The Dragon Reborn, which seems to be a Wheel of Time novel. I wish I knew more about it. Or maybe not. Sounds good that you can see me. I hope it's worthwhile. So yeah, thanks for actually being there. I appreciate it. Biggest glad to see you, Joe. Perfect. I need to watch your newest book burning. I do really appreciate the stuff that you're doing there. In case you haven't subscribed yet to what JCM Byrne is doing, it's very interesting. It's booktube written by a person that has actually written books and published those books on their own, and they're really good. So go and subscribe to JCM's channel and watch his show, because it's called Book Burning. And so far, he hasn't burned books yet, but he has got a really cool 80s intro. Hey, Jin, how are you? Hey, Max. Wow, Liam, you made it. I'm always wondering about our time difference. So it's the last Saturday in the week in the month, which is sort of where I've settled on for these monthly Marxist things. We might have a special guest next time or the time after. I'm looking at that. It might be really fun. It might also be very angry. I haven't watched it yet, the latest, the book tag, so I don't know if you shout me out. Anyway, so yeah, we end up here. Last time I said, I'm not sure if you can do this, and then it turns out that I'm really bad with times and stuff, because I thought it would be Keep It True Festival this weekend. Turns out that was last weekend, and I found out just in time and threw everything down and went to Keep It True instead of doing booktube things and stuff, and so we can have it this time around. So I can keep the actual rhythm going, which not something I'm known for. Hey, Kaja, is that how I actually pronounce your name, or is it more Kadia? I'm not good with that. So yeah. That's why we can have this today. I haven't really prepared a lot of things. I figured we'll just talk about what I've read the last couple of weeks, what I plan to read, what I plan to do, where I'm going with all of this. I am working on that huge video that I try to actually get done before I leave for my sister's wedding on Monday. I mean, I fly to Israel on Tuesday, but I leave here on Monday, so there's a very limited time. I've prepared for this one more than for anything I've ever done on BookTube. I have invested heavily in things, and I'm now facing the most difficult challenge in my entire life. I'm trying to learn how to roll cigarettes, which I have never done before. and it's not something easily learned when you're blind. But I'm working on it. It's a project. I had like the most the most interesting, the most fun like shopping list today was like red wine, tobacco, papers, and a box of beers. And that's my weekend shopping. Not on smoke necessarily, although here's the thing biggest. I bought papers and I bought tobacco, and there's like these labels that tell you what terrible things can happen if you smoke. And the one said that there's a high chance of stillbirth if I'm pregnant and smoke. And the other one said, like, smoking can make you blind. And I'm like, seems there's no downside, I guess. At least for me. And so, yeah, that's a project for tomorrow. I might be I might be rolling some cigarettes tomorrow and smoking some tomorrow as well. Yeah, that's like a huge project that I'm working on. It's long. It's about publishing. It's about Brandon Sanderson. It's about Marxism. It's about critical theory. It might even go down the way to situationism and things like that. I'm really proud of what I did. I even wrote something almost resembling a script. I hope it'll be worth it, and I hope I'll piss off a lot of people with it, because that's kind of the point. Well, the lung cancer wasn't mentioned on my specific box, so I think as long as I smoke the ones that only turn me blind, I feel I'm probably on the good side. I mean, that's how labels work, right? Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, worst comes to worst, I always have a pipe here, so I can just smoke a pipe if I feel like it. You know, that is an option if I want to go. Once my hair turns gray and I get the wizard look more like worked out, I can always just take, you know, a pipe and pretend authority and wisdom and shit like that. But I try not to, because you know, once again, I live under my bed, and smoking pipe under my bed might not be the smartest thing I've ever done. It's not the dumbest thing I've ever done, but it's certainly up there. So that's like a huge project. I've thought about, like, I don't want to call it dramaturgical like ideas and stuff like that, but like I've actually thought about how to structure a video, which is news for me. So I hope when it comes out that you'll like that. Yeah, I will smoke the pipe at some point. But I feel like I need to gray more in my hair and beard, and then I can arrive whenever I feel like it, which is precisely when I want to arrive, and then I'll get myself like a staff and with a big knob on the end. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, it's still like a process. Where I'm slowly making my videos more like systematically political, and we will see how that goes in the future. I have like 4 huge videos, and I need to figure out how to do those with all the fun bits in between. Yeah, I can see that. Like, while playing D&D, smoking a pipe is definitely definitely a good idea. It adds to the experience, I guess. Um, yeah, as I said, like I have like these 4 large projects, and after the next large project that I think I'll hopefully get done after I return from Israel, will be the Arthurian myth kind of Sunday school, and then I'll try to return to less ambitious Sunday school videos, which, you know, I can do in like one take, and they're only like 30 minutes long and not like 2 hours, because I end up talking way too much about Chrétien de Troyes and stuff like that, which, you know, no one wants to know about that guy, I assume. Yeah, that's the problem, Liam. It's like I keep adding ideas, and I'm like, bam, this would be really cool. And it's like, yeah, it would. But that's the point. Like the first one is about like the one that I'm working on right now that I hope to be up during the week when I'm away will be about Brandon Sanderson, the culture industry, society of the spectacle, parasocial marketing, and exploitation of fandom, which is something I feel we need to talk about. And then the next one is about the Arthurian myth through time and current Arthurian retellings and how they pick and choose different aspects of Arthurian storytelling. I'm more or less done with the research for that, except like just the heavy reading of having to read Mist of Avalon, which I haven't read yet. And then there is like an follow up to the anti-Semitism video. I prefer Robert de Boron, Liam. Hey Ori, how are you? Glad you make it. So yeah, as I said, like the next one is like a follow up to the anti-Semitism video, where I want to look and trace the influence in fantasy literature from theorists like Herder in the 18th century, and the beginning like national romantic movements in Scotland with the Ossian forgeries and Germany, and there's a Danish author that I keep forgetting the name right now because I would have to look it up again, and all the way through the 19th century, the idea of like the Kunstmärchen, the literary fairy tale, and creating mythology, the obviously the Kalevala, and what Lönnrot does in Finland, and how that influences our writers like say George MacDonald in the 19th century that has an influence on C.S. Lewis, and how that like romantic tradition with all the political ideas that are sort of influencing the romantic tradition, how that moves into the 20th century and into what we call contemporary fantasy, because there's a lot of like sort of problematic assumptions in that 19th century ideology that either come through that George MacDonald fantasy side of things, sometimes through William Morris, although Morris himself was a very cool guy and a socialist. But on the other hand, you have the darker side through like people like Jung, and like the psychoanalytical side through Jung, and looking for like that national character and the subconscious that go on through to people like Joseph Campbell and so forth. And that stuff ends up defining fantasy and how we write fantasy in a lot of ways. And that's like a large project where I want to trace those influences that have been, people like, obviously an author like J.R.R. Tolkien was very much aware of a lot of the influences and like the aspects that come to that, although Tolkien himself seems to have had a very soft spot for like Herder's ideas of fantasy, and not fantasy, of like the unity between language and national character and environment and nature and stuff like that. Like those people were aware of it, but like other authors that then just like blindly copy that, take over these ideas, which leads to a lot of like really dark, like blood and soil kind of elements in a lot of fantasy world building following Tolkien. I mean, even Tolkien's Middle Earth has a lot of like blood and soil kind of elements in it. Hey, Oso. Yeah, that's hey, Jin. Yeah, that's a demonic monkey that is riding a wooden moose, and that monkey is my oldest plush stuffed animal that I got from my godfather on my first birthday, and it's still with me. And now it's riding the wooden moose marionette puppet that my sister gave me for a birthday present years ago. I'll double check with the monkey right now. Oh yeah, well, there you go. Just to be sure, I have a way more demonic monkey though. Nice to know, Ori. I'll check that out. That might be very much something that I might be interested in. So yeah, that's sort of like the large ongoing project. That's like the that three-pronged approach to the what I call like the shadow of the past, like the dark side of fantasy, where I look at like how a lot of epic fantasy does take all of these, darker elements that show up, and we tend to not question that. The third part will be like very much very much like structural anti-Semitism from like a Marxist Moshe Postone side of things, which will be probably the one thing that will make people most angry. But I feel like the one, like the genealogical argument, where we look at just like these elements that are just in Western fantasy, Western epic fantasy. I feel it's important to know these kind of things, if that makes sense. And I've already done most of the reading for that one. That's like the third large project. And the fourth large project is following up on Sanderson. What did I say about John Biggest? The moose? Anyway, so the fourth one will be looking at Brandon Sanderson's literature and comparing it to Mormon doctrine and how these things show up in his writings. And it's sort of like a follow-up to that whole parasocial marketing kind of thing, because in times where authors are not dead in like a Barthian sense, and actually interact with people and become something like stars and so forth, we need to kind of look at like the influence they have through the works they're writing. And I feel that might be interesting to look at that. And I've already, added a lot of literature on Mormonism. I'll do my reading. Don't get me wrong. I'll do all the necessary reading on Mormon doctrine. I'll read all of that stuff, but it takes time, because it also means I have to read Brandon Sanderson books, and they are notoriously thick, as I've heard. So that's my four large projects, and between those, I'll try to actually get back to making shorter, fun videos. We'll see how that goes. I had some ideas for like more like funny video ideas, but they're like, they need to just stay, because a joke needs to actually work, and that I at least can't force that kind of thing. Mormon doctrine is your middle name, Liam. So here's the thing, though. I want to make this very clear. Is like when I do that with Brandon Sanderson, I will not try to make fun of Mormon doctrine or anything of the sorts. I'll just read the books and see how much of that those ideas show up. I tend to take people's faith seriously. That classic German sense of humor. Yeah, I don't know, man. Here's one for you, Biggest. It might be really difficult unless you know some Scandinavian language, and it's really dumb. And I just came up with it. It's like, I wanna buy like a Arctic island, and I want to gather like a community of like bodybuilders that just go there to work out and be cool men that like go into like gym bros every day, and I would call the place Swole Bart. And I'm really sorry for that joke, and I hope no one understood why it was really, really dumb. I have never heard of the Chaos Queen books, or the author Liam, but I mean, there's a lot of Mormon authors, and book on I have a book on the influence of Latter-day Saints on American culture in the second half of the 20th century. I haven't started reading it yet, but I'm very much looking forward to reading it because it sounds like a topic that is very interesting to look at. I don't know about Tracy Hickman. I've only read the first like quartet of Dragonlance novels. That was Dragons of Autumn Twilight, and from there on, the one that starts with like the Burnt Village. That part I've read. I even own the first Dragonlance adventure. I always wanted to run that once. Well, I mean, it would be kind of dumb for the Mormon Church to condemn speculative fiction in any way. I mean, not to say anything, but apparently there are very good resources that show that some bits of Joseph Smith's writing were more or less inspired by 19th century fiction. I haven't read anything by Orson Scott Card, and right now I don't plan to. I've heard that Ender's Game is actually a really good book, but I would need to have to, not to put too fine a point on it, pirate the audiobooks because I don't want to give that guy any money. So I don't know. Now that sounds interesting. I really have to check out that Adam Roberts blog. I will do that. That sounds really interesting. I don't know. Dragonlance was always a bit too, I don't know, too kitschy for me. If that makes sense. I don't know. Also, I really hate Kender. I mean, like Liam, of course. I mean, for how long has that whole like that one science fiction fantasy class at BYU that Sanderson is teaching now, and that like other like important authors have been teaching. The Rune Lords guy has been teaching before him. He used to be teaching had you know what I mean, taught before him. How long has that class been going? So there's like a lot of people that basically study or like have a chance to write speculative fiction, because there's a lot of people that want to write speculative fiction. It's a large community, and there's a class where you can learn that from like a respected author and network from there on out. So I guess even I mean I guess the networking part might even be like the more important part. Like if you take part in that class in BYU, you'll probably have an easier time to get like a publishing deal somewhere, because someone might just help you somewhere out somewhere and shit like that, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. He passed last year. Larry Correia too. Steve Diamond, I don't know. Larry Correia, I don't know. I've never looked into the faith of Larry Correia. I just like have him down as like a somewhat redneck kind of person. I think like his newest book is on like the Second Amendment, while all of you guys over there need to get firearms, and how it's important to fight off like the woke agenda or something. Yeah, also I get that. Like, I once had that, like, on a very illegal way. I had a Dragonlance radio play from like the late 80s, early 90s. It had like all the really, it was like a shortened version of like that original tetralogy, you know what I mean? Those four books, and it was like with like radio play with like different voices, and had like super cheesy 80s synth music, and it was brilliant. And then I started reading the actual books. I'm like, wow, they're actually not that good, but that 80s feel of was just like brilliant. I wish I could find it somewhere. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere. It's absolutely glorious in its innocence, and in its fantastic innocence. Oh, I didn't know that. Larry Correa. Yeah, okay. I didn't know about the animated movie. Wasn't like the third of those like early 2000s D&D movies, wasn't that based on Dragonlance? Yeah, yeah, Joe. I think that's exactly what's part of it. It's like you have like successful people, and they network within their faith, because that's part of like, if you're in an active church, you help each other out, right? So that might be. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie. I went to the first. I watched the first D&D movie back in the early 2000s. And it wasn't good, but I did really appreciate like the opening scene when you have those two thieves trying to break into like the magic school. That felt like very, very appropriate to like a D&D campaign in the way it was done. I haven't been to the theater. I haven't watched the new one yet. I think Liam has. I've heard great things about it. I so I've no idea how the new one is, that Honor Among Thieves, but I'm I feel like you make a D&D movie, you have to be meta. You don't have to be like vanilla, but you have to be meta about it, because like D&D is very much a meta game at this point. Hey Drew, well, it kind of depends on what I can actually afford and like make work, but I'm definitely go to some festivals and shows. I just went and watched Visigoth and Sanhedrin and Fer de Lance play in Kassel on Wednesday, and I went to keep it true, and I wish I could go to Courts of Chaos again. That would be perfect. Up the Hammers in Athens would also be great, but right now I don't think I can pay for flights. There is something called Iron Fest in Germany. There is Headbangers Open Air. I might be going to Wacken. I'll probably go to Summer Breeze. Beyond that, I have no idea. And beyond that, I have no idea. I really wish I can go and see one of the Iron Maiden shows, but like my my finances are currently beyond abysmal. I don't know if that means like they're Tartarian or something, but they they're terrible. I don't know. I guess the problem there is also that you haven't played D&D. I don't know how different music events are in the US compared to Germany. So I don't know if it is the same thing for you, Liam. Also, I don't know what kind of music events you would be going to. Oh, what's those two Iron Maiden songs also, while we're on the topic? Um I can say that like from like newer Iron Maiden, Passchendaele on Dance of Death is a fantastic song. I saw them play that live once, and that experience with like all the technical, the pyrotechnics and all the shit they had on stage, that was insane. Well, Run to the Hills, I guess, makes a lot of sense. Fear of the Dark is a good song, but I've heard it so many times. But yeah, they are good songs, and that's part of the point. Is like Iron Maiden has great songs. um, and they have like a lot of songs about like books and stuff that which kind of ties into that whole like heavy metal fantasy science fiction connection. I do like the whole Somewhere in Time album with the whole like cyberpunk aesthetic and Stranger in a Strange Land and good stuff. It was in a horror movie. They put Fear of the Dark into a horror movie. That sounds very meta because the entire song is about how watching horror movies can make you fear the dark, and then you put that in a horror movie. That sounds interesting. What kind of movie was that? Black Sabbath. I see. Here's the thing with Black Sabbath. I've seen Black Sabbath with Ozzy once, and he was far better than I thought. It was on the um, 13 tours, so not the final tour, but the one before that. And it was actually much better than I thought it would be. And there's some brilliant stuff in there. I have unfortunately also seen Black Sabbath when they called themselves Heaven and Hell, and with Dio, and that just blew me away because those Dio albums, those four Dio albums they made are just like really good. And I mean, like Tony Iommi hasn't written a bad riff in his entire life. I don't think the man is capable of touching a guitar and not creating like divine riffs. It's just like how he's wired, I guess, and that's that's something. So I like that. I just don't necessarily can stand Ozzy's vocals for like a longer time. If I want like 70s like doomy stuff, I tend to go towards Pentagram, whom I absolutely love. In that way, like obviously, like Bobby Liebling is one of the most fucked up people that you can find in heavy metal, and like terrible person, also sad, tragic person in a lot of ways. In case you haven't seen it, in case you want to see like a really, really intense, emotionally intense documentary about a music star, or not music star, but like a musician. Um, there is the it's called Last Rites documentary on Bobby Liebling and Pentagram, and it's basically about a bunch of like fans trying to actually find Bobby Liebling and get him to get the band back together, and they find him when he's so deep into all kinds of addictions and living in his parents' basement, and how he tries to get back. You know, let's just say it has some really really dark scenes, and it's heart wrenching in a lot of ways to see him try to be that person that he wants to be and struggle with addiction and get this stuff together. And it's very raw, but I can highly recommend you watch that in case you haven't. It's yeah, it's something in its honesty, I guess. Mostly that's what I took away from that. Um, Yeah, the heavy metal talk. I'm always like worried if I should do more heavy metal stuff on the channel, because I'm never quite sure how people would like that, and I don't want to do just like album reviews, because that would mean like having to figure out how to get sampled of sound in there. But there's like aspects to like the whole like heavy metal music scene that I think are important to talk about as well. I mean, maybe I should do that, because a lot of like a heavy metal discourse online isn't necessarily where I wish it would be, which kind of parallels with what I think about a lot of book discourse. It's almost like I'm not a very, I'm not a very nice person in that regard. Almost. So there's that. Sorry, I'll have to check something for a second. I'll use the time to open another drink, and then I'll be fully engaged again. But I also need to find my bottle opener. Because I'm that kind of person. All right, we are drinking, which I am changing drinks tonight, because I have a friend gave me this, and in case you don't know what this is Retsina, which is a terrible piece of white wine laced with, well, pine resin. Fear Street. Okay, I'll check this out. Sounds good. Flash of the Blade. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know if Idaho doesn't. I mean, I can definitely look into underground metal shows around Utah and Idaho if you're interested, Liam. That's but it would be like very specific kinds of music. Well, what am I gonna say? Iron Man sounds good. It's a brilliant riff. So I get it why you did that. Well, at least it was only a foam gun gin and not like a decapitated bat. Could be worse, right? With Ozzy, you never know. Hey, Paromita, how are you doing? Glad to see you here. Wait, they're remaking Twilight as a TV series? So here's an offer, Parameter. If you're interested, it might be terrible. But here's an offer. I can buddy read Twilight with you. And I'll promise I'll be as open-minded as I possibly can. Because I've always felt that people use Twilight just to bash on teenage girls, which, is easy because teenage girls are the one group you can get away with bashing online. And like white teenage girls are the one group you can get away with like trashing online all the time, because everyone seems to hate them for some reason. And I've never read Twilight, so I might I might be tempted to do that, and then try to not make an old white dude explains all the sexism kind of video about it, but explains like other stuff, or like just buddy reading, in case you're interested in that. Although I can't promise I can do it in, like, I don't know, one day, which is probably how much time you would need for that. Lionsgate, that's the guys that did the what's it called? Fucking um the other thing Salman Rushdie hated, Mockingjay. God's brain rot. See, Jen, there are mostly those awful React videos, and there's like one or two people that do like more like a detailed stuff. But yeah. All right. So, but was it cocaine, or was just he on cocaine, Jen? All right, Liam, I'll do my best. My favorite German beers. Number one is free beer. Number two is cheap beer, and then I have to find out. Books on anti-capitalism. Now, the question is what you mean by anti-capitalism in that regard. Do you mean like non-fiction books, academic books, or do you mean like fiction books that kind of deal with questions of capitalism? Because that's, three different categories. And there I go with trying to. Sorry, I need to scroll through the chat, which is not necessarily what screen readers are made for. Great. Also, in there, I have not read Twilight. I have watched the first Twilight movie, and let's just say it wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen by a long shot. I saw it in like at a sneak preview, so we didn't know what we were getting, and it was like $4 for the ticket, and it was like the first Twilight movie, and everyone was like, all the dudes like, Twilight. It's like, look, I've seen far worse things at the theater, like beyond, you know. I doubt I will get an interview with Stephanie Meyer also. I think I've caught up. Hunger Games, that was the term that I was looking for. Hunger Games, tributes, yeah, that thing. So Lionsgate, I think, was the studio that made it big with Hunger Games. That's like the one, like when they like really got like made like really struck it big. Also, how do you imprint? That sounds very capitalist to me. Hey, Jeroen, how you doing? I'm way behind on the chat because I get distracted and then stuff happened. And everyone was talking about Twilight. Still glad to drop that you dropped by, Jeroen, and I hope you enjoyed it tomorrow. It has already one or two really dumb jokes, so there's that. Well, for Discworld, I don't know. Discworld is not necessarily anti-capitalist. As much as I love Terry Pratchett, he's more on the side of I would call him like a liberal. So he's definitely criticizing the practice of industrial capitalism and exploiting workers and stuff like that. But he doesn't actually take down the system, question the system of capitalism as a whole. So there's no actual anti-capitalism in Discworld, sadly. There's obviously some fairly direct anti-capitalism, or at least criticism of capitalism, in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, in Midnight Tides and Reaper's Gale in particular. You could definitely put down the whole Culture series by Ian M. Banks as a post-scarcity society is very much like somewhere out there between anarchism and libertarianism, if you want to put it that way, but it's post-scarcity, so it does also go away like capitalism. In fiction, who else is very depends on what you say. Like people that really hate capitalism and make it very clear that capitalism sucks in their books, and people that try to come up with like alternatives, because those are obviously two very different things, which is part of the problem of what Mark Fisher would call like capitalist realism, that we have reached a point where it's very difficult to imagine alternatives. Like we all know it sucks, but it's very difficult to come up with alternatives because we're so deeply stuck into that. And you read a lot of you read a lot of sci-fi nowadays, and a lot of that sci-fi is suddenly 10,000 years in the future we'll still have capitalism. It's like, why? And it's because no one can imagine an alternative. Well, you should give Malazan a try. It's a fantastic series. I can highly recommend it, and it does have some very critical thoughts on the way we run our planet and run the world right now. I am certainly a fan of Marx's analysis. I would not necessarily call myself a full-on Marxist, because there's a difference between like taking Marxist writings and Marxist theory and stuff like that, and turning Marxism into like a full-on like ideology. I don't like ideologies, which is sort of what Marx would say, That sounds weird. Also, what does soulmate mean? Yeah, I've heard about that part, but as I said, like I've only watched the first movie, which I thought was like an okay kind of teenage. I don't want to say rom-com, but like sort of like romantic movie, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's okay. Bella's kind of cool. I just wish she had like actual agency, and that's sort of where I want to go with this. But yeah, that's the point with Marx. It's like Marx understood like Marx's analysis of like history and the system was the systemic analysis is relevant today. The question is like how you actually what you take from that and where you go from that. But like that's that's why we have like neo-Marxism and all the other things that move from there. But like old school Marxism or like even Leninism or Marxism-Leninism, that's no. You take the analysis and then you go from there and figure out how to, move, use that today. And I think it's like one part that like a lot of people nowadays forget when they talk about Marxism and shit like that. It's like it's about analysis of systems and structures that do in fact that go beyond people, that force everyone into those structures. It's like we've built this machine and it's very difficult to get out of that machine. And blaming individuals, as much fun as it may be, does not necessarily change anything. No. Hey, Plugo, how are you doing, man? Glad you're passing through. We still need to do that conversation between you, with you and Oso and me on cultural appropriation, colonialism, and appropriation of mythology of native people and stuff like that. I really want to do that. Sorry for being so terrible about like organizing shit, but that's something I still want to do. God. Has anyone else ever drunk Retsina besides me? Do you know how glorious the stuff is? Like to have like half a liter bottle with like one of those beer bottle caps in a fridge of just white wine with that taste of pine resin, which they claim is historical because back in the olden days in antiquity, it's Greek marketing, right? Like back in the olden days, they used to use pine resin to actually prove make make their barrels actually waterproof and stuff like on the inside. So obviously the wine tasted of pine resin. And then at some point someone was like, you know what? We can actually sell that to tourists or to everyone else. And now you can, and if you're in Greece nowadays, you can buy like every gas station, like in Europe you would buy beer, you can buy these like half-liter white wine bottles from the freezer, and it's glorious. Also has more alcohol than beer. Just saying. There's always a project to get to. That's that. That's unfortunately true. But I want to do this fairly soon. I might have like one or two like theoretical books that I'm reading soon that go also into that whole cultural appropriation stuff. So I might have more theory, and then I'll just like ask you to come on, and then we'll just like I don't know. I'll drink beer, and Osa will eat some shrimps, and you can do whatever you want, and we'll talk about cultural appropriation and mythology and identities of all kinds of mixed backgrounds and stuff like that. Yeah, sorry. Also, I had to drop that one. Yeah, the soulmate thing. Well, okay. As I said, like if you're into having a buddy read with me of Twilight, and I totally understand if you don't want to do that because it might it might be terrible. Then I would love to do that. Otherwise, I'll just do the do it with like Oso, and we'll see what happens. But I would love to do that with you because you have like a very different perspective from mine, and I feel like I can always learn just by having like that kind of perspective that is so culturally different or background different. Don't want to put like words to it, but like a very different perspective from mine. And it reminds me that just because I'm, obviously right, doesn't mean that's like the only right perspective. You know what I mean? Cultural appropriation should be fun. Yeah, maybe. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. The video, yeah. There's so much going on there. Yeah, that makes sense that you can do that with crowdfunding if you reach the right people. That makes sense, Patrick. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, the video should be, I mean, not fun, but should be very interesting. And there's like so much going on in that area. Is like, what can we appropriate? If I write about Greek mythology, is that cultural appropriation? Is it not? Am I only allowed to? Is there a decent way to do that? At what point is it actually exploitation? In the same way that going to Latin America, finding some people in the Amazon forest and asking them about all the questions about their specific herbal medicines, and then just patenting them. Is that the same thing? You know, there's a lot of things going on in that area that might be very interesting to explore, and fantasy has, because it does often draw from mythologies and folk tales and stuff like that. We have often just done that. Um, because a lot of like fantasy as literature has this background from, well, Western Europe, and very specifically England and Germany, who both were colonial powers, although one was much better than the other at being colonial, I guess. Not at like making colonial, not at genociding the people in your colonial empire. We Germans did that pretty well, if that's your goal. So yeah, I would love to, as I said, like I would love to do some more of those heavy metal videos if I, you know, find a key to making it work without, trying to figure out how to play like actual samples and stuff that get you copyright stricken or whatever. Because I'm lazy with editing too. That kind of stuff. But I look, it's a subculture. I'm interested in subcultures. Is my point, I guess, in that regard. Wait, did my browser just freeze? Is that possible? Oh yeah. I guess my browser just froze. Anyway, hey Johnny. John. John sounds better. I'm sorry. How you doing, man? Glad you can make it. This is me drinking very cheap Retsina and rambling about subcultures, heavy metal, and Marxism, I guess. I just read like a really interesting book. I'll just like ramble about that until someone else yells at me in the chat or whatever. I just read like a really interesting book on parasocial relationships, among other things. And there's some concepts in there that I feel like I really profited from, like talking about statistical men and women, which I found really interesting. Glad you're doing good. And the concept with like statistical men and women that I found really interesting is the idea that we have a lot of like we have these ideas about people in the world. Because right now we know it technically we can find out about like anyone on this planet, like not personally, but their group of people and so forth by just like checking within seconds. We just like go to Wikipedia and find out about like any obscure group of people somewhere living in a specific village and so forth. But all we get are these statistics, and that always flattens the existence. So our approach to like empathizing with them or not empathizing with them is different from like how we would empathize with people that we know personally in a lot of ways. And I found that like a very interesting approach to talking about like parasociality and how that has like all these different dimensions, because one of them, the one that like people on YouTube always talk about, is like how we venerate people that have a platform and venerate stars and shit like that. But it's like the other side is also there, that like we empathize with people that we see on the news when they're suffering and stuff like that. So that was like a really interesting way to look at all these aspects. Hey Drew, yeah, have a good time, and glad you showed up. That was cool. That's a very good question, Paramita. I have no idea. I think it's there's like this divide between YA, and especially YA targeted at teenage teenage girls. By girls, I mean girls and trans girls, obviously. Teenage girls mostly targeted, right? And it feels like there's like the rest of the world just like excludes that part from like their like perspective of reality. Like those people exist to be mocked or to ignored. So like, to be ignored. So like no one really thinks about that, and it does definitely have an impact, I assume. About Mass and Meyer, I have no idea. I think like the main interest there is like I have no idea how much Sarah J. Maas actually interacts with her fans, because I think that's like a difference with Sanderson compared to Stephanie Meyer. Didn't do. I mean, she did like a bunch of interviews, but she didn't, compared to say J.K. Rowling, right? J.K. Rowling did like a lot of like interactions, social media interactions. We're not going into politics here. Just like saying like J.K. Rowling took a very active role, had a very active role, has probably still has a very active role in engaging with her fandom and her world. And from what I remember, Stephanie Meyer didn't have that. You know what I mean? And Brandon Sanderson does have that. Brandon Sanderson does engage with his fans. He's a moderator on Reddit boards, subreddits. He's active. He engages. He talks to people, and that I think is a difference. So J.K. Rowling is closer to Sanderson there than Stephanie Meyer, who was someone who mostly or almost exclusively communicated with the world through what you might call mainstream or like mass media, newspaper or TV interviews or something like that. And with Sarah J. Maas, I have no idea. I only watched the original like interview with a vampire movie, and I don't know. I've never been much of a vampire fan for some reason. Like undead have never been like my type of like monster, I guess. Except, of course, that one very sexy undead pirate. But if you know, you know. And it's not even about her being sexy or anything. It's about it being her. Um, what you like about vampires, Liam? That just interests me. Hey, AP, and yeah, Plugo. That's exactly the point. It's like you want to you want your authors to bring their own crowd, and you want to domesticate that crowd into a way that they can only that they spend all their money to purchase. Um, I don't want to amp it up too much, but hype it up too much. But I'm working on this video that does go very much into all of these things, and I've even bought a fucking beret for that. I just need to figure out how to actually roll cigarettes, and then, well, good to go. Well, Ori, that's exactly what they do. Just to say, that's why, like, one of the best Terry Pratchett jokes I've read in like ever, when he has like just the notes on vampires, like they like to feed from the same person, and then just like the word cluster suck, and I'm like, did you just? Yeah, he did. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. She's certainly living her best life. That's true. But that's the point. It's like I love Shirk Elal because she's cool. Just like the way she does, like the I like her pirating a lot and all the other stuff. But here's the thing: is like how does the brooding, blood sucking immortal teen differ differ from Aragorn, except for the blood sucking, and Drizzt Do'Urden? If like, isn't that just like always what people on role playing boards in the 90s, 2000s, called Trenchy Mekatana, the brooding loner? Neo from Matrix is another character. Like, aren't those like always the same guys? And you know, I don't want to say Animander Rake, but it's sort of the same thing. I have not read that. I'm aware of Cory Doctorow. I have not read Choke Point to Capitalism yet. Also, I don't want to say anything here, but like that, like very invertebrate shrimp-like creature and herbs, and getting stuffed with those. I can understand why you might like that. You are very much encouraged to mention whatever Lavitida writes, because I'm somewhat behind, and yeah, Driz is super lame, but yeah, you're very much encouraged to mention Lavitida's vampire detective novels. I'm pretty sure they like stories. They're pretty cool. I mean, knowing Lavitida, I know they're good. Also, I know that Liam has been reading the new Lavitida novel because he got an ARC for that, and I'm not envious at all. But I'm mostly happy that I have gotten one more booktube person to actually read Lavitida and enjoy it. I'm not saying the cult is growing, but See, here's the thing with Drizzt. I read a ton of those R.A. Salvatore novels when I was a kid, and I did kind of enjoy them. And then I tried to read them again like 3 years ago. That did not go well at all. Yeah, the circumference of the world. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I can't wait to actually get it myself because, yeah, I expect it to be brilliant. So yeah, it didn't work well. I still think that the original Icewind Dale trilogy does hold up. Well, not well, but it's still entertaining. Like it's not better or worse than like the first Dragonlance series. I think the Homeland, like the Drizzt's youth thing, is terrible, and anything after that is just like horrific, and you should never go and read that. I think like the Crystal Shard is not a bad book for a book that is just like actually whose job it is to get people to buy Dungeon like the D&D box set at the time. I've read worse like tie-in things. Legacy of the I don't know which ones the Legacy of the Drow books are. I remember the one storyline where there is like this like princess like Duke's daughter, and she has like the affair with this like artist, peasant, whatever dude, and she gets pregnant, but she obviously can't tell that anyone, and then she tells everyone that she got raped by Wolfgar the Barbarian, who obviously didn't do it, and then the guy who actually did it and was like super in love with her, he commits suicide, and Wolfgar then just like actually takes it on and take the. I was like, this is not the kind of story someone with the very specific skill set of R.A. Salvatore should write. That just don't do that. It can't possibly work. And that's kind of the main problem with like that is like it tries to do too much. At the end of the day, a D&D novel that is specifically about D&D, and if you want to do it as like a tie-in novel to D&D, you need to have like the dumb humor, you need to have like the sort of meta humor in there that makes D&D the thing that most of us enjoy, because let's be fair, most of the time when we play D&D, those of us who do, it is very much also about like all the meta jokes and all the all the stuff that happens at the same time. It's not exactly a serious activity. It's like Spine of the World. Yeah, that's the one. And then like Wolfgar becomes an alcoholic, and there's all these like things in there. I don't know. No, but like like I played the first Icewind Dale computer game. It's one of the last computer games I actually finished. So it'll always have like a very a special place in my heart, even though it didn't have like any story and very little connection to the Icewind Dale novels. But it was fun back in the day. But I think like most of like role playing is about the social thing, about the banter and stuff like that. I've played dark role playing stuff and horror games and stuff like that, but like to evoke like actual like horror, like skin tingling, and when you're the hairs on the neck stand up and everyone is like actually That thing that you hope you get with like telling horror stories around the campfire, and it also almost never really does. That is extremely difficult to do if you're playing a role-playing game at a table with like 4 or 5 people. It's very difficult because it only takes one person to make a dumb joke and the entire atmosphere is broken. So most of role-playing, like tabletop role-playing from my experience, is a bunch of people doing like improv one-upmanship on who can make the next dumb pop culture reference and cool joke and have a good time, which is, it's perfect. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just like saying that if you try to transfer that into the medium of a novel, it is very difficult to do that because novels have like a different medium. You can do the whole like meta level of jokes and stuff like that, but then it's not a serious novel. And a lot of these D&D tie-in novels try to be like high energy adventure novels. I'm like, my game never plays like that. Most of the time, if someone tries to do like a really cool action scene, they usually fail the roll and fall on their face. And then we need to figure out how to deal with that. And I think that's part of like how like why it's so difficult to have like novels that are supposed to promote the hobby of role playing, because your game's never going to be like a novel, and your novel's never going to be like a game. You have to use the different genres or like the different media to their best advantage. First Bioshock was super scary. Yeah, Liam, you're right. Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser is the closest to real D&D that I've ever. Yeah. Yes, there is a Black Company tabletop RPG. I do actually own that book. I bought it like at a role playing shop. It was secondhand. I paid like $10 for it, and it has rules for Tonk. And I just want to play Tonk all day. It was done by Green Ronin Publishing, I think. It's a hardcover, but it was like it. I think it had like a very limited print run. It's very difficult to get, and I don't think they even sell the PDF anymore. But see, that's the point. Like, you can take those whole multi-hall dungeons like super seriously. That's totally fine. But you're taking them seriously as a game. You're not necessarily taking them seriously as a novel, because games and novels are very different, media. I don't know if I have the Stormbringer. I have the Elric tabletop RPG. I don't have the Thieves World one. I do own a Prince Valiant tabletop RPG, which is one of the things that Chaosium and Greg Stafford came out with in the 80s, just like Pendragon, the role-playing game. And Prince Valiant role-playing game is. There was like this old gaming store, and I bought it for like really little money, and it has all the like the old Prince Valiant images in it, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, yes, Whedon films are very much closer to tabletop RPGs than a lot of other things. Paramita, look, Drizzt was never that popular. He's just like the entry like into D&D for a long time. So a lot of people that play role-playing games know that character. But you haven't missed anything. They're bad. They're really bad. The early ones are pretty misogynist. The rest is just bad. I will not comment on Kings of the Wild. It didn't work for me. It's all I'm saying. Also, the HIV thing was bad. But there were some good bits in Kings of the Wild. It just didn't, coalesce for me. I think, Joe, I think like hybrid helix does make for a cool setting, because you have the whole the basic setting of the space station is really cool. You have the portals, you have the planet with like all the kaiju and stuff like that, and you have all these different alien species on the place. So it does make for like a really cool setting. It's sort of like Sigil from Planescape, but in space, right? I can see why people want that, but then the question is like, they can just like take D&D and assign like values to like aliens and just do it. It doesn't need your like additional work, right? All right, I need to. I'm slow today. Also, like every time it like the YouTube comments just like scroll by, I need to click on like more comments, and then it has to reload, and the screen reader goes like takes forever to just re-engage with the site. Yeah, you could probably just use I saw your question, Paramita. I'll go into that in a moment. I'm still like thinking about the role playing thing that Joe brought up. I think yeah, champions might be like the best way to go with like a uh, is champions still like active? I think it might be like champions might be like the best one to go for like hybrid helix game if you want to do like the very numbers version. And beyond, you can just like always use fate or whatever as a system, just adapt it. Because so basically what people are asking you is like, provide us like species stats so we don't even have to do the hard work, because beyond that is like, yeah, you're hanging out on the space station, you're doing your job on the space station, you and maybe you go on missions and stuff. Also, I will always play one of those bear people. Ursins? I'll always play an Ursin. Because they get to eat like really good food and they get to get drunk all the time. Hey, great that someone else knows champions. I'm glad, Joe. Yeah. So like the remake thing, yeah. Oh, well, I think it's see the problem with that I have with that. Look, okay, quick, before we go to like the remake thing, which I will definitely talk about. The Ursons work because they're like basically they're dwarf Viking bears. You know, they behave like dwarves or Vikings. They're like somewhat like angry. They eat a lot, they drink a lot, and they're simple. And people like those characters. It's like Gimli, but as a bear. I think that's like at the heart of it. Like people like those like simple guys. Also, like the way you actually wrote them makes it very clear that they are um they're good guys at heart. You know what I mean? They're like they might be, overwhelmed by their emotions sometimes, but they're good guys at heart. They're very simple, good guys, and the truth is, like deep down in our souls, we all want to be good guys at heart, and we all suspect that we're not. So that's why we tend to love those kind of characters. Like, I wish I was Gimli, like a simple guy. I wish I was like, keep forgetting her name from your main Urson matriarch, and I was like, I wish I was that person. Like, she's not dumb; she's super smart at the end of the day. But it's like people that wear that we wish we wish we were honest. That's like the things like we want to be simple, honest folks, and the world we live in makes it very difficult to be simple, honest folks. So we gravitate towards those kind of people, which is why a lot of people say in First Law, for example, love Logan Nine Fingers, because Logan Nine Fingers, at the end of the day, is a very honest person. He wants to do the right thing, and then the world just like shows up and makes him do all kinds of bad things. But like that's the kind of people we want to be deep in our hearts. As long as no one froze Ang, I think we're good. Sorry about that. I didn't want to put that picture into your mind, but that's sort of like my analysis of like why people like the Ursons. Also, you introduce them as refugees, and people do sympathize with refugees. Me personally, I like them because they like to eat, salmon and fish and stuff, and I like to eat fish. Ursana? No, I think her name is slightly different, but yeah. All right, the remakes. So here's the thing. I believe that the Lord of the Rings remake thing and the Twilight remake thing and the Harry Potter remake thing are terrible as an idea. Obviously, I haven't seen any of that, and I don't think I ever will. But the idea is, I think, to cash grab in or to like go for nostalgia. It's like these shows are not necessarily marketed towards like a new audience. Like, they don't remake Lord of the Rings to get like 15 to 20-year-old kids to watch Lord of the Rings. They're trying to capitalize on the nostalgia of our generation who saw those Lord of the Rings movies when we were like 15 to 20. You know what I mean? And that at the end of the day is obviously bad because it means that, well, it's, yeah, it means there's like no creative juice behind that. It's just like, let's like milk them twice if we can. And I personally don't agree with that, but then again, it's the culture industry, and there's a large enough market. I mean, remember like when that, is it called Breaking Dawn or whatever, that Twilight novel that Stephanie Meyer wrote about like the whole same thing from Edward's point of view, and suddenly all those people that read Twilight when they were like 15, all of them just came, and you suddenly had like a huge boom in Twilight, and all those like 30 years old were back reading Twilight and buying Twilight merch and loving Twilight again. Yeah, people watch that, like in the industry, they watch that and they want to capitalize on that. And like all those like teenagers that love Lord of the Rings and that like still think that like when they hear Lord of the Rings or Tolkien, they have the Peter Jackson movies in their mind. They're a huge audience. As you can just like, with very little effort, you can just like sort of grab, because they're there. You don't have to, risk anything, I guess. Because even if they're gonna complain and hate it and yell on Reddit or whatever about it, they're still gonna watch it. And that's all you need, because you want them to watch it, to pay for your streaming service, to maybe buy some merch and shit like that. And that's the goal, because at the end of the day, it's a vehicle to sell stuff to make money. Yeah, see, that's the point, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that nostalgia. It's like, I was never like a Harry Potter person, so I don't have that like feeling. But yeah, it capitalizes on nostalgia, and it makes a lot of sense, because people's in their 30s are a very powerful, like they're like your dream audience. Those people are supposed to have jobs and be able to spend money. I was like, people like me are sort of like the exception, because I don't have money. But like most like people in their 30s are like the dream audience. It's why fandom in like the media industry is trying to define like their target fandom like as like 20 to 30-year-old middle class people, because those are the people with the most like buying power. That's the people you want to drag in and make buy your shit. That's the goal at the end of the day, because with the amount of money it takes to actually produce that kind of media, that's an industry thing. It's like that's how you do that. So you invest money, you want to take money out of that, and you want to make sure that you're actually targeting it towards an audience that is able to pay, and that is able to make that investment worthwhile. And that's why banking on nostalgia works so well, because yeah, we all want nostalgia, because like life right now sucks, and being brought back and transported back to where we were when we were like 15 and first discovered Gollum, or whatever your favorite character is. That's where we want to go back to, and we want to feel that again. And even though it's not exactly the same thing, there's always the dream that it might just be that close to what it felt back then. And we want to be there again, because we didn't have all the problems we have nowadays, right? We didn't have to struggle with like how to actually feed our family or anything, because we were fucking teenagers. So that's what they're selling us. Now, I know that sounded very cynical, and I just want to make it clear. Like, look, if it works, it works. I'm just saying that's sort of like the impetus behind it, from what I can tell. And that once again is because the system that we're living under, which is capitalism, is about making more money. So the people that are working in that system up there, they're not like, evil people. I mean, they might be, but they're not necessarily because of that. Their job is to maximize profits, and they are looking for like how can we do that? And that's like by um, finding the people that have all the money and then trying to evoke the sense of nostalgia within them, so they spend all that money. And that's why you go back and do all those like remakes and stuff. Which, yeah, it's kind of sad. I mean, it is sad, but then again, you know, I think I've said that before, right? So that's my thoughts on those remakes. Also, I don't believe that will ever work because we are no longer 16. Look, to go back to Twilight, right? Twilight, with its like soundtrack with like the Muse songs on it and the pale colors and all of that stuff. Like, if I had been a like 17, 18-year-old girl when I watched that movie, that would have like worked for me. But like when you're like 35 or whatever, right? And you're watching that again, it might give you that hit for like those 90 minutes, but it's not like it's not heroin anymore. It's methadone, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Which is really sad and like a terrible metaphor. I'm aware of that. But I think that's part of the problem. Right? You're doing it again, and usually that does not necessarily mean it. You can't necessarily ignite that again. I hope that makes sense. That's part of the point. It's like you may have all these people that really want to do new stuff, but they have to, talk to investors, and they don't care about the property. They just care about the bottom line. As the line goes up, they're happy. You're definitely right there, Plugo. Wait. I need to ask you that, Plugo, because I'm not a Marvel person. Did William Burroughs actually write for the MC, or are you just like making this up? No, creativity never pays. I mean, creativity is like throwing darts at someone when you're blindfolded, and you might you you might score a full belter, but it's very rare and might need the help of a Loki, and not an MCU Loki. I mean, and if we remember, no one was actually betting on Hooder in that situation. That was like a really weird metaphor. I'm sorry for that. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Corporate. Yeah, sorry, Pluga. I said like I'm not an expert on comic history, so I'm not sure what might have actually been possible or not. But holy shit, yeah. Although having the Avengers sit down and just take off all their things because they're at a naked lunch would be really fun. Just saying. Uh, so yeah, there's that. Anyway, I hope my explanation helped you, Paramita. Um, as depressing as it was, and yeah, but I'm still tempted to actually read Twilight because I've never read it, and like, how much worse than Wheel of Time can it actually be? Or how much worse than Wheel of Time and Wizard's First Rule? Captain America's Naked Lunch. Oh God, yeah. I am. See, the problem is I can imagine that, and that's kind of part of the problem. Captain America's Naked Lunch. That would be. It definitely is shorter than Wheel of Time. That's true. It does definitely explain why indie publishing is so important. Hey, Joe. Yeah, glad you came by. It was great to talk to you, and I'll see you soon, I guess. And have fun. Yeah, indie publishing is important. Indie things are important. Underground publishing, not being part of the system, doing it for the for the spirit of the thing because you believe in it, not because you know part of. And that's part of the problem, right? It's like that with underground things and underground scenes in a lot of ways, and comics up to a point of that, and heavy metal up to a point is that, and self-publishing definitely is that. But we're not talking about like a monetary economy. We're talking about like more like a gift economy. It's like you do this, and people ideally give you enough money so no one actually loses too much money on it. But the main goal is that you're contributing to like a common thing. But that's like a different way of looking at like economy, and like looking at the world compared to like mainstream publishing. But that's where progress is made, because that's where people actually come together to figure out how to do the thing they want to do, if that makes sense. And that's dumb to redo Hogwarts with like the same characters, just like new fucking pimply kids with glasses. I don't know. I think that might just really go down really bad, especially with like Harry Potter, because they might be underestimating how media literate kids in that age are nowadays, and how different like the times. That's like 25 years between like the first Harry Potter and now, right? Roughly, plus minus like no, well, plus 2 years maybe, and that won't work. Like, this is not like the mid 90s anymore. The world like 7-year-old kids are in is not necessarily the same. Plus, the world like the access to like knowledge they have is not the same. That sounds like really bad. I mean, it might work for Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings has this like mythic quality to it, with extra myth, the mythic quality to it that is somewhat timeless. So you can tell the same story again for the new generation. I think like 20 years is too soon. I think like 20 years is too soon, because the impact of the Peter Jackson movies was so huge. I would have probably waited like another like 10 to 20 years. And then you can just retell the same story because the story is so timeless. But like Harry Potter is, from like the first three books, which is all I've read, is very much like tied to like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's like, I don't think you can do that anymore. And Twilight, I don't know. I said, like, I haven't read that, so I don't know about that. But like, it sounds like a really dumb idea unless you're just like trying to make like a really cheap like or not recast, but reproduction in the way that like a lot of like the Disney real life adaptations are kind of about cashing in on like nostalgia. But see, also that's kind of what makes me sort of hopeful that capitalism can't even wait 40 years anymore. It's like things are getting shorter. The fuse is getting shorter, and there might be an explosion at some point. And I, for one, can't wait for that one. Just saying. But yeah, I think that's like Lord of the Rings does work because it does have that like mythic quality. So if you take the same story and just do it again with like different actors and modern technology and maybe some slight changes in like emphasis and stuff like that, that might work. But Harry Potter is so tied down to its like very specific technology and like very specific age that, I mean, can you imagine Harry Potter and no one ever has like a smartphone or everything? Kids will just go like, "What's wrong with those kids?" That's good. You keep on playing Halo games. Microsoft is very much relying on you, Liam. Um, Although, just saying, like Liam, you want to do like a D&D campaign with me at some point? Just like play some D&D at some point. I think that might be really funny. Anyway, yeah, I don't know about Warner Brothers and like I haven't seen Rings of Power. I think it was like the the wrong choice to make anything Middle Earth in media was to do that. Just like focus on like cool ages and just make your own story in those ages. Liam, is the Microsoft Afterlife basically just built on Minecraft? Just asking. All right, see you around, Plugo. I hope your gotta get going means you have to take out your dog and make them eat, I don't know, raccoons or bulldozers or whatever your dog eats. It's like my number one Middle Earth story that I would tell if they give me the money would be a sort of like crime story set in Gondolin, and it has got like Turgon, Detective Turgon, and he's like running around in Gondolin trying to solve crimes and stuff. All the way, you have like all these flashbacks, how the pressure around that is building up, and how Morgoth is trying to find Gondolin, and he has this like conflict with Maeglin going on and stuff like that. But you have like these noir crime things every day in like the Elven city of Gondolin. He tries to solve crimes, and it's it would be really cool. And then it ends with like Maeglin's betrayal and Gondolin being betrayed and the Balrogs coming in. But that's like the ending. But up to that, you have like more like a small scale drama, and you have like these people. You can talk about all these like personal developments and how like life in an Elven city actually works. I think that would be like a really cool story, and you could tell that. Well, I could maybe if you give me the budget and stuff. But that's kind of the things that I would go for, is like find bits that work as like a setting, and then tell your own story within that specific Middle Earth setting. Because Middle Earth has all these like great places where you can do all kinds of cool stuff. I hope he gets the turkey. So that's my number one thing I want to do in Middle Earth. And of course, like the really really dark. I've said that before. The really dark, like sort of Cormac McCarthy style Western kind of thing about like Aragorn's hunt for Gollum, and how they like walk into like the wastelands between the Aerith, not the Aerith Withering, but oh gods, the Emin Muil and Mordor, and how they're just like wandering through those like mountains, and Aragorn is constantly like a gunslinger, and Gollum is like the man in black, and he's just like hunting Gollum through that, and they become more and more entangled, and the world shrinks around them two, just like one trying to escape and the other one trying to catch him, and then you have all these like dreams, and like you know Gollum dreams of the ring, and the ring is in his mind, and then like Aragorn's face shines through the ring, and then on the other hand you have Aragorn, and Aragorn dreams of Arwen, and he dreams of Arwen, and suddenly Arwen's face morphs into Gollum's face and stuff like that, and the colors kind of bleach out, and they're just like yell at each other from different sides of the same canyon and stuff like that. That would be so cool. Wow. I don't think I can. I don't think I'm allowed to do that. But that's my Middle Earth, where you actually take like the medium of the movie and just like do crazy shit with it. That wasn't AP suggesting that. That was me also. No, that was me. I don't know what AP thinks about it, but that's like my dream. I wish that would work. Yeah, you're right, Liam. That's the point. It's like uh, at the end of the day, a world is huge, and it does have room for both of these things at the same time. Because like look at our planet. We have like places where there's like really cozy stuff. I assume some of you have like a fairly cozy family life, and we could totally write stories about that, and it would be really glorious. And then we could move to, I don't know, Sudan, and find out what's going on there, and it suddenly is not that cozy anymore. That's the point. Like a world supports our world. Any world supports all stories, all possible stories. And the idea that like a world is just like war and darkness and whatnot, that's not how worlds work. Just saying. I'm sorry, AP, that someone actually tried to take that and blame it on you. I still think it's a good idea, but it's very much my very bad idea. But see, that's part of the point. Is like it's about finding finding the location and finding the characters where that works and where you can use and project the thing that you want to project. You can have like a wholesome story in, I guess you could even tell like a wholesome story in, like, I don't know, the Mad Max universe. I mean, the openings of like Mad Max 1 when he's still like with his family and stuff, those bits are wholesome. And you could tell that wholesome story and just like ignore the whole like him blowing up people and all the road racing and shit like that. You could do that if you want to. And the idea that we identify entire worlds or entire universes with like one emotion or one specific style is part of the problem, because that's where we go when we suddenly turn stuff into I don't want to say racist, but like the idea that it's like an essentialist kind of view at stuff where we're like suddenly like, yeah, this is a world of darkness, which made White Wolf a lot of money, and it's like, this is a world of like war, and this is a world of whatever. It's like, no, look, the thing is that as soon as there's like more than one human being, they will find places for softness. They will find places for like emotional depth. And they will find places for kindness, because it's part of like what we are, who we are. And it's important to make that room for that, because if you don't, you flatten it out. You turn it into, what Christopher Rojek calls statistical people, and where you turn them into like, that all of these people are like, they're not. And it's important to be aware of that, but it's very easy to forget that. Hey Dan, I did not eat mushrooms. I just think it might be actually a really cool, fun movie. Look, I don't care about black dwarves or whatever, but dwarf women need beards. They can be well styled. I don't care about that, but I've read too much pressure to not want my dwarf women to have beards. But that's like a personal thing at the end of the day. Also, is there any source in Tolkien that ever talks about dwarf women? I don't think so. Certainly the whole like certainly the whole like beard discussion does never come up. I mean, looking at Tolkien's sources, looking at Tolkien, he never even says that elves have pointy ears, right? I mean, I think like the closest he gets is like when he says like, the word for ear is related to the word of leaf, word for leaf. So I guess elves have pointy ears, just like leaves are kind of pointy. But that's sort of, as far as I remember. I might be wrong, because I haven't read all of Tolkien. No, I think Paramita, they are not allowed to use what they read in the books. I think that's part of the problem. Yeah. All right, I'm slowly running out of ideas. You guys got any questions I should answer before we actually knock it off for tonight? Because otherwise, I have to record like an entire video on Brandon Sanderson and Walter Benjamin and Theodor Adorno and Guy Debord and a lot of other things. And someone needs to figure out how to actually roll cigarettes, because I'm so bad at this shit. I've never seen that 70s Hobbit cartoon. I have watched the old what's his name? the old Lord of the Rings like animated movie, which is really Walter Bush. Yeah, that's again. I watched that one, and I love that old Lord of the Rings movie. Uh, although here's the fun thing, apparently my mother saw that back in the day in a theater, the Bakshi, the Mark Bakshi Lord of the Rings, and she saw that back in the day in the theater, and she was waiting for it to be released on DVD or a VHS or anything, which took forever. And she was super happy that she got that, and that's how I saw the Mark Bakshi one because I'm slightly too young to have seen it before, but she swears on that one. She loves the new ones as well. She loves the books, which is like where I got like my love for fantasy from. But my mother, despite all her faults, which are not that many, does love Mark Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, which I count as an absolute bonus. Rankin Bass. I just remember the Bilbo Baggins song that Leonard Nimoy sang, which is really glorious. I don't want to say excited, Paramita, but I'm definitely looking forward to it because I have this like how to say that, like I want to be aware of what fantasy in general is doing. So where the fantasy genre in general is. So I'm looking forward to reading Stormlight to just have that part of like general fantasy discourse under my belt. You know what I mean? Do I expect it to be like my next favorite books? No, but I'm certainly open to enjoying it, and I'll see what happens and how I like it, and where I go with that. But like, I'm that's sort of like where how I take that. It's like I have books 1 to 4 already in my Audible library. That's how seriously I'm taking that shit, right? It's like I'm just waiting for book 5 to come out. I even have like Edge Dancer in my Audible library, so I'm taking this seriously. I think Bakshi did like a really good Bakshi did like a really good job with like the things he did. I mean, it wasn't as cool as Fritz the Cat, but also if you haven't seen it, there's a very good like video on YouTube by Folding Ideas, who's generally like worth checking out. And he has like Dan Olson has like a very long, like 2 hour video, looking at like the history and the way that that Mark Bakshi's is it Mark? Well, Bakshi's. Anyway, the Bakshi's Lord of the Rings works and how he came to that. And I really highly recommend you watch that if you haven't, because it's brilliant. The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Yeah, that's the one. It's great. Now I'll wait. I'll wait either until I get the time to do that like really complicated second Brandon Sanderson video, or until book 5 comes out. We'll see, but I'll read all of those books. I'm like I read 14 Wheel of Times books. I'll not give up on Stormlight. I mean, I'll try stuff, and it's one of those things that like sometimes I feel like people don't understand. Like I'll never just dismiss a book without reading it. or without giving it like a really good chance, especially if it's like a popular book. Because I want to find out what people like about it, which is like, why I read Wheel of Time, which is why I read like 10 Dresden Files books. Are they good? No. Is there lots of like problems with them? Yes. Do I wish Cal from Very Good and Kind would finally actually get the time and opportunity to edit all the podcasts recorded on it? Yes, because holy shit, they were funny. Also bad. But that's why I'm always willing to try all the things that like are currently big on BookTube and whatnot. It's like I want to have like a feel where like fantasy as a whole is going, and that's entirely different from like what I personally enjoy reading. Personal taste is weird, but at this point, I feel like I'm invested enough in fantasy as a whole that I want to know where the whole. I want to have like a finger on the pulse of fantasy, if that makes sense. Whether I approve or not. I can always squeeze, can I? I will read Sun Eater. I'm worried. I'm scared to read Sun Eater. All right, like so here's the thing. Like I don't like I think hard magic systems make sense for a very specific kinds of stories, like Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Does work because it has a hard magic system, and at the end of the day, what you get is a heist. And a heist only works if you, as the reader, can think along with the characters, and you're like, I know the rules, I know the riddle, I want to solve it on my own, and then I want to read how the characters solve it, and ideally, I'll feel good because I thought the same way. I'll feel convinced, confirmed. That's the term. Yeah. So that's where like hard magic systems make a lot of sense, and you can use them for that. And that's a good thing. That's great. Like use that because like at the end of the day, the person profiting from a hard magic system is not the world, it's not the characters, it's the reader because they can think along and they can think ahead and they can solve puzzles. Like you want strict rules when you want your readers to solve puzzles. And that's great. But you need to write the story for that. You don't need that kind of like thing. You don't need a hard magic system to write Lord of the Rings. That's not at the end of the day, the story does not hinge on how many PowerPoints Gandalf expends when he tries to seal the door against the Balrog. That's not where the story is at. Ever. So you need to know what you want for your book. And I do appreciate what like hard magic systems do in those more like heist detective crime style of stories. But it has to be for that kind of story. Yeah, that makes sense. But Sun Eater, yeah, I'm scared because everyone is comparing it to Gene Wolfe, and I'm like, I love Book of the, I like Book of the New Sun, and I think it's a very unique kind of book, and I think you don't do anyone any kind of good turn if you compare them to something like Book of the New Sun, because it's like it raises expectations to levels that are like very difficult to, in music it's like, oh, this new album is like as good as the first Iron Maiden album. I'm like, no, you're not helping anyone with that. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. It's like my main worry is like I'll read Sun Eater and I'll just like shrug and I was like, yeah, it's okay. You know what I mean? And that's sort of like where my worries are. Although someone actually sold a Sun Eater to me by saying like, you know what, it's like a Fading Suns novel, and I don't know how many of you know the Fading Suns role playing game, but I spent a lot of time playing Fading Suns, so it does have a hit for me there. I have read The Knight and The Wizard, and I do love them both dearly. The way they mix Norse mythology with Arthurian legends and stuff is brilliant. Also, the the whole like struggle between the talking dog and the talking cat are just like brilliant because they actually work so well as like defining the characters of dogs and cats. I love that. Gilf is one like I think I took how like when I did like one of those like tag kind of things like Animal Companion. I took Gilf from like the Wizard Knight trilogy. But has like and you said Liam like that he had only read New Sun after writing the first book. Has he played Fading Suns though? Well, Dune mixed with Star Wars is Fading Suns, sort of. How do you like it so far, Mott? Hayward, you like the night so far? I think it's really cool. So my thing is lagging right now. I need to be careful with reading stuff. Now that's interesting. I don't know. It's like Fading Suns is a brilliant role playing game. It was like sort of like um that's an interesting combination, Liam. So here, Fading Suns was like a super fascinating role playing thing from like the late 90s. It was like people from White Wolf who did the vampire the masquerade, the whole world of darkness stuff. And Fading Suns is like their whole, like their personal hobby thing that the brothers Bridges, Bill, and whatever the other guy's names, Andrew, I think, were. And it's like this sort of Dune like, but weird, like Dune related kind of thing, like in the far future. And you have like an empire, and you have emperors, and you have like nobles, and they fight with swords and stuff. And you have like a very rigid church, which is like very Catholic church like, and doesn't like technologies. it's pretty much like a late 90s kitchen sink role playing game, but it's I spend a lot of time playing really cool games in there and being like, well, a six-legged alien, but that's what I kind of play. It was like a six-legged like version of like a Wookiee, sort of, which is almost like a space Viking, which is sort of like what I tend to gravitate to, I guess. My point is like, if you like space, like weird, like Star Wars adjacent tabletop RPGs, go check out Fading Suns. It's actually really cool. I still have to read Latro. I really want to read Latro. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to do that. I already have them in my library. I just like have to actually get to them. But yeah. Titus Grown. Yeah, well, like if you're trying to compare yourself to to Mervyn Peak, you better deliver the goods. Good night, AP. Glad you showed up. I hope you had fun. Oh yeah, Fading Suns is so much fun, Liam. It's so much fun. All right, sorry. Give me a second. I need to scroll down this the chat, which takes way too long. Good night, Biggest. Great. Glad you showed up. When you say hang out, do you mean like digitally, or did you actually meet Chris Rocchio in person? Because he lives next near to you, Liam. Just interested. Like, no worries. Like I said, like I've not read the books anyway. Because I know he's Catholic, right? He's like Gene Wolfe. He's very Catholic. Oh, nice. That sounds like really cool to hang out with like Dave Butler and him. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. All right. Here's the thing. We've been doing this for like almost 2.5 hours, and I'm running out of beer, and I'm also running out of bladder. So the question, like, do we have like any burning questions we need to answer right now? Because otherwise, I might actually just like end this so I, get some sleep and get the chance to record the rest of this like very difficult video tomorrow, and also learn how to actually roll cigarettes, which is not as easy as you might think if you have never rolled a cigarette before and you're blind. Well, if also says we can go, who am I to actually keep you here, right? So yeah, once again, like, thank you everyone for actually showing up and hanging out, and I hope you had fun. I hope you take something away from that, and I was going to call it like 1,090 subscribers, celebration chat, and that was this morning. And then I came back to like 1,089 subscribers, so I can't do that anymore. But it's like, thanks for having out. It was a great time. If I manage to actually film that whole video tomorrow, even if you hate my points, please watch it and tell me what you think about the structure and the way I actually build up the argument. Because I'm very much going out on a limb there and doing like crazy things, almost. You know what I mean? Anyway, I wish you like a great weekend. Those of you who have like 1st of May off as like Labor Day, as we do in Germany and some other parts of Europe, use that, take that time, enjoy it. I'll try to do some stuff, and I'll be back next week with something after my sister's wedding, which I'll be at next week, I think. And I need to figure it over here. How do I stop this? How do I stop the madness? Here we go. I found the button, and it's like, press this button, and it's like, are you sure you want to press this button? And why does it feel like I'm running like a fucking nuclear weapon program here? Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I'll see you soon. Cheers.